Okay, so let's do question 6. Which one of the following could be a complete and accurate list of the applicants that are interviewed? So it has to include F, all of them do. If G is interviewed, then J has to be interviewed as well. So A isn't going to work. B, if J is interviewed, then L has to be interviewed as well. So B isn't going to work. So we can eliminate A and B. C, if L is interviewed, that is not a trigger. Okay, so it's not a trigger in rule 2, but it's also not a trigger in the last rule because we have to know that M is hired as well to be able to infer that O is hired. So since that doesn't trigger anything, in the absence of someone being interviewed doesn't mean that someone else is interviewed. The fact that we have other players absent doesn't mean that anybody else has to be present. So just having F and L is fine, and having just everybody else not interviewed is no problem. D, if we have G, we have to have J, and E, if we have J, we have to have L. So those can be eliminated for pretty much the same reason. So this first question is actually just testing us on those first 2 rules, really, and maybe on this last rule a little bit. Okay. Question 7. Which one of the following could be true? So could Lee and Meyer be the only applicants interviewed? No, because F always has to be interviewed, so A is out. B, F, J, and K are the only applicants interviewed. If J is interviewed, I must be as well, so B is out. C, G and one other applicant are the only ones interviewed. Well, if G is interviewed, J has to be as well, and L and F always has to be interviewed. So if G is interviewed, we have 1, 2, 3 others that must be interviewed as well. So if I go down this list, C and D I can eliminate, but E must be the correct answer. Question 8. If M is not interviewed, okay, so if M isn't interviewed, that means that K is not hired. And if anybody is not hired, that actually doesn't tell me anything. So that doesn't mean that K isn't interviewed, just that K isn't hired. K is if M is not interviewed. Okay. Yeah, I don't actually see anything else that I can deduce from that. E says F is interviewed, which is always true, but K is not hired, which is what we've deduced here. So E is the correct answer. All right, 9. If G and 5 other applicants are the only applicants interviewed, and if exactly 3 applicants are hired, then which one of the following could be an accurate list of the applicants hired? All right, so I'm going to start with the question-specific information, question-specific condition, and then try to make some deductions. So G plus 5 others. So we have to have G. So G is interviewed. We have to have F as well. We have to have J because of G. We have to have L interviewed. Okay, so we have all of these guys. Okay, so we need 2 others in, and that means that we would actually just have 1 out. Okay, so if we just have 1 that's not interviewed, then how is that going to work? 3 applicants are hired, so 3 of these are hired. So we might actually have to try this out a little bit and see what's possible in terms of the hiring. So F, L, and M are hired. So that's not going to work because if M is hired, O has to be hired as well. Okay, so if we have M hired without O hired, then we can eliminate it. So that actually allows us to eliminate A, B, and D just based on that last rule. So that's quite handy. Okay, so because this is a could be true question, if we're struggling to come up with deductions, then we can actually just go to the list and see if we can eliminate anything because it must be false either based on the question specific condition or the deductions that we did manage to make from it, or possibly based on the original rules like we've just done here. We eliminated 3 based on 1 original rule. Okay, so it's between C and E. For C, we have K, L, and O being hired. So let's see if there's anything to add to that. So K, L, and O. If K is hired, M is interviewed. But if we have K, L, and O hired, that means all of them had to be interviewed. So K and O would fill up these remaining spots and M would actually be out. So M could not be interviewed. So we would end up breaking Rule 5 if we actually followed this through. So C cannot work. Therefore, E must be the correct answer. So it's possible that G, J, and L are hired. And then we could have K and O be interviewed, and that wouldn't be a problem. It's not going to trigger anything if they're just interviewed. Or we could have K and M just being interviewed doesn't trigger anything. Or O and M, that would be fine. They could just be interviewed. Okay. So I'll stop there and let you do the remaining couple of questions on your own. But if you do want me to go over those, just let me know and I can make a video or we can talk about it in session. Okay.